A very good morning to every one of you. I would like to take the time to thank our esteemed speakers this morning. Thank you very much for making time to join us. I would also like to thank our member companies for making the time to be in our company this morning. And of course, to every one of you who are joining via social media or on this call, a very good morning to you. My name is Alicia Logan. I head up the membership department at Proudly South African, and it gives me great pleasure to be in your company this morning. Thank you for joining us for a topic that is really close to my heart, and of course, a topic that is so apt because we are in September, which is Heritage Month. So our topic, aptly, brought to you by our membership marketing team, is Heritage in Every Purchase. I think it's so important to align Proudly South Africans' work with heritage. We are still in Heritage Month, even though we are looking towards the next month. But September has seen us, wear local, wear our cultural attire, drink our cultural beers, eat our cultural foods. So everything about the month was aligned to culture and to really who we are as South Africans to the rest of the world. And so there's no better way to end Heritage Month than to talk about heritage in every local purchase. Um, just to give you a little background into what our webinar is about today. So the aim of this webinar is really to empower South African consumers with knowledge on how their everyday purchasing decisions play a vital role in the nation's rich cultural heritage. Every day that you make a local purchasing decision, you are adding to and preserving South Africa's rich cultural heritage. You are also uplifting local communities and nurturing homegrown talent. I think, if anything, Proudly South African as a buy local campaign is there to nurture and grow homegrown talent. So, by spotlighting heritage inspired entrepreneurs and, of course, celebrating uniquely South African success stories, this session or this webinar will encourage conscious consumerism. So we want you to make a conscious purchasing decision. We want you to purchase local instead of always purchasing international, because a conscious consumer decision is what we are advocating for always. So through a dynamic panel discussion, I mean, we have Apiwe on the call, we have Spear on the call, and through this really dynamic panel discussion featuring these diverse voices, this webinar will offer an inspiring dialogue on the importance of supporting local. Ideally, that is what we are there for. So before I bring in the panel discussion, I want to give you a very quick overview on Proudly South African and what it is we have to, offer you as member companies or sorry, I'm just trying to. All right, I think. Apiwe, are you able to see my screen? I'm presenting, yes. Okay, thank you so much. So, to all our members, to our panel speakers, and even everyone joining us on this call, I thought it would be so important for me to just give you a really quick background on why we are advocating for buying local. And when you buy local, you really add to the heritage of this country, because you are saying that local communities and homegrown talent is really who you are supporting, and you are there to retain their jobs and to create their jobs. So in a nutshell, Proudly South African is advocating to buy local across the public sector, the private sector, and the general consumer. We are asking you to retain and create jobs. By making that local purchasing decision, you are not taking away a job, but you are actually retaining a job and creating much needed employment in this country. Skills development, we come from a socio-political past whereby we need to make sure we undo that past and we do right with our workforce. So skills development is so important. Economic development, the more you create, the more you manufacture local, the more you sell local, the more your local economy grows. It's a no-brainer, really. And of course, empowerment through our BE platforms. We are hoping to empower previously disadvantaged groups of people, women in business, disabled in business. We are hoping to empower people in business and to ensure that this is an inclusive environment, an inclusive economy. Improve living standards. The more you work, the more you earn, the more you are able to improve your lifestyle. Infrastructure development, the more you manufacture locally, the more warehouses needed, the more manufacturing facilities needed, the more DCs needed, the more we build the infrastructure. And of course, the more we export than we bring into the country, we balance off the trade and we increase the GDP. So ideally, we want to make sure that we are manufacturing locally, exporting more and importing less, so that we become less reliant on exports and other countries. Of course, Proudly South African is not just a South African theme. It is being done across the world, where the world over, we realize how much it is, or how important it is, to be self-reliant and to manufacture within your own borders, so that you can create your own employment and you can develop your own economy. So in terms of structure, we were formed by NEDLAC and we are funded by the DTIC. We work by within 4 pillars. That is preferential procurement. That is part of the CSD. We want to make sure that the public sector, that is, your government employees or your government procurement, is actually procuring local. We want to make sure that your private sector, via your procurement officials, is procuring local. We want to ensure that your consumers are well versed on local products by use of the Proudly South African logo. And we want to make sure we have thousands and thousands of companies on board as our member companies, not for financial reasons, but for accessibility of locally made products and services to you, the general consumer. Of course, we are, as Proudly South African, in order for us to ensure that the local products, land onto the shelves, we have to make sure that we provide you with the logo to put onto your product, to identify your product as a local product. And in doing so, we need to make you a member so that we can actively advocate for you. So through membership, via us vetting you for local content, for quality, for environmental standards, and for fair labor practices, we onboard you as a manufacturer of a locally made product or service. And then once you pass the vetting process, we make you a Proudly South African member and we afford you multiple benefits. Now, I'm not going to go into the benefits because really this is about our dialogue. But what I do want to say, as Proudly South African, the reason we vet you is because we want to make sure that we, as a buy local campaign, as an advocacy campaign, we want to ensure that whoever we advocate for, they're actually a locally manufactured, a company that's manufacturing locally, or a company that's providing a local service. The aim of what we do, as I said, is to create much needed jobs in the country. And the only way to create those jobs and to increase our economy is to make sure that you understand the heritage in every purchase. Whenever you purchase, you are and you make a local purchasing decision, you are growing your economy, you are sustaining jobs, you are creating jobs, and you are creating that feel good of, I am making a heritage decision in terms of purchasing this product because I want to grow the South African economy. It's really a feel good purchase. It is a must have purchase, of course, but also you need to do that bit for your country. So it's really also a patriotic decision. So I'm not going to, as I said, I'm not going to go too much into proudly South African benefits because I think that we are well versed on that. But I wanted to give the background on proudly South African purely because I want you to understand how heritage and the economy work hand in hand with us, so that we can advocate for you. So this morning we have, as I've said to you, a panel discussion between two of our very good speakers. I would like to give a little bit of a background on each of them. I have made some notes here so that I want to give you proper information on each of them. Our first speaker is from Tolagazi Beer. It is Apiwe. I have been working with Apiwe for quite a while now, and I know that Apiwe is really a very skilled entrepreneur. In fact, I don't think you anymore, I don't think it's entrepreneurship. I think you're a businesswoman. And I think that you give a lot to your business. You give yourself to your business. And I just want to give a little bit of a background so that people understand, the way I understand you. So Apiwe really is one of the most passionate female entrepreneurs in South Africa. Born and raised in a small village in South Africa, Apiwa was first intrigued by the science of beer making when she visited an open day at one of the local universities. After high school, Apiwe went on to complete a BSc degree from the University of Witwatersrand and then BSc honors majoring in microbiology and biotechnology from the University of Pretoria. Apiwe joined South African Breweries in 2006 through the company's graduate recruitment program and underwent an intensive 18 months training to attain brewer or brewership. So since then, Apiwe has worked at South African breweries, and in 2020, Apiwe has launched her own beer and cider brand called Tolakazi. So a truly proudly South African company whose vision is to become a global brand. So I would assume a global brand with local heritage, which I think is very inspiring. And then, of course, we have our second speaker, Spear Mbela from the Music Imbizo. Spear is the founder and long-standing project manager of the Music Imbizo, one of Africa's most important annual music business conference, now in its 17th year. Wow, that's amazing. So with over 20 years of experience in the music and creative arts industry, he has also served as a business development executive at Downtown Music Hub. Spare also really amazing biography. Welcome. Welcome Apiwe, welcome Spare. I would like to bring you in. I think it's important for us to have this panel discussion just to give people out there the understanding of what we mean when we say homegrown or people that are working towards adding to this economy and growing South Africa as well as themselves. So welcome to the both of you. I'm going to ask interchangeable questions, and you can answer. And I'm more than happy if both of you feel the need to answer. I think, as I said, it's a panel discussion, so we can come in when we wish to. So Apiwe, one of our questions to you, brewing has deep cultural roots in Africa. How do you weave indigenous traditions and ingredients into your Tolagazi beer while appealing to modern consumers?
Thank you, Alicia. Good morning to yourself and everyone that's currently on the call. I think for me, it's it's one of those things. We alluded to it earlier on to say, as we modernize, we need to also keep a bit of our culture and our heritage with us. And that's one of the great ethos of the brand Dologazi, to say we are about celebrating Africa, but we are celebrating a new world Africa, but not forgetting where we come from. So we use indigenous African ingredients in our brews to also preserve that history, so that the future generations, actually ourselves even, that we know how, we don't forget how beverages have been made in Africa in the past. And also, sometimes people say, no, I don't want to drink this because it's an acquired taste, because our tastes have evolved and now we are more used to modern day tastes. But for me, it's about to say, how do we not forget our truly African drinks and foods? That these are not something that is that should not be like, it's not unique. It's something that has been there before. It's just that over the years we've sort of forgotten, or it has been lost over the time. So with Teologazi, we just want to bring that back into front to face and also celebrate these different unique ingredients. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go on to spare, I just wanted to ask, and this is not part of your questions, but just for myself, in terms of the beer, are you ever afraid to make something look traditional, against the modern requirements of the purchaser, let's say? Yeah.
I do. There it's really a I think it's the context of Africans in general. There's a big awakening, where as Africans we are all trying to go back to our roots. We're all trying to understand where we come from. And in South Africa specifically, where everyone now is trying to question, but like, why are we now where we are? What has happened along the journey? And what I find very interesting, because one of our beers is we've got a Marula cider, and as
Mm,
you know, Marula is obviously prominent in the KZN and Limpopo areas, where people grew up drinking a Marula beer made by the grandmothers in the villages, and to see it in a nice looking package, and people start questioning, but like, how is that possible? I'm like, no, but these are things that have been there. I have not reinvented anything, but
mm.
because we've taken that past and brought it into the present and made it to look appealing to the current consumer, with still holding on to the heritage. And I think that's what has been working for us and across the range also.
Yes, I think that South Africa has a lot of the greatest raw material available to us that the rest of the world does not have.
Yeah.
So I just feel like we should never be, brought down to what the rest of the world is doing when we have everything we can to actually align
Yeah. We
more
should try,
so
we actually should be
that
creating the trends.
we
The
should be
rest of the
creating
world
the
should be
trends.
coming here and saying, "Oh
Yeah.
my God," you
Yeah,
know.
have you seen the rest of the world have coal, gold, diamond, marula, all of the
Mm,
things that are used to manufacture skincare, hair care,
mm, mm.
jewelry. So we have it. We should be the blazers as opposed to the rest of the world. So I just feel like, just to say, never be afraid to set the standard because the rest of the world must follow. I think that.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. Spare, just in terms of the music, so music is one of the strongest reflections of South Africa's cultural heritage. How does the music in Bizo ensure that traditional music and sounds remain part of the modern music landscape? How do you make sure that it appeals to the modern consumer, but it still remains rooted in Africa?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that question, Alicia, and greetings to everyone and my fellow panelists as well. Um, I think what we've done and done very well with the Music in Bizo is we've created a space not only just where tradition and innovation meet, but a space where we can go back in time and take the best of who we are so that we carry that forward, right? Our showcases, they don't just spotlight mainstream genres. They deliberately include traditional sounds, indigenous instruments, and artists who draw from cultural roots. We host panel discussions and workshops that go in and really, really dig deep in who we are, not only in South Africa, but in the continent, right? There's always about 5 to 10 countries from around the continent that become part of the Music in Imbizo. So we draw deep into who we are, into our heritage, and we make sure that that is preserved. We make sure that the young people that are coming into the industry are able to draw from that well and are able to, to move forward from there. And that is what is important from what we do as the Music in Imbizo. Right. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. I think, one of the things that I've been reading recently, one of our very famous singers that have gone abroad, it's the conversation is more around on her, uh, whether she's Indian or colored or black, or whether she's dresses this way or that way. And I think in terms of when South Africa gets introduced to the world, it should be about our ability to create the best of music than our ability to be different races. So I think that's so important. I think it's absolutely important, especially what you are doing and what your business is doing, is to remain true to music and what we have to offer as a country, as opposed to anything else. I think that's very important. So, Apiwe, what impact do you believe consumers make when choosing locally brewed beer like Tolagazi over global brands?
So for because we are obviously working with local communities, throughout our value chain. I mean, from the designer that did our product design to the printing, all those are sourced locally. And obviously, as a member of Proudly SA, we really are for localization. We are for sourcing local and also including the local communities and uplifting the local communities. So by consumers buying one of our products, it's more than just supporting Dologas as a brand, but it's also supporting everyone else that we work with throughout the value chain of actually
Mm.
having the final product on the shelf. So we really do appreciate those who currently support us, and also call on those who might not have yet to say, you know what, you're not just it's bigger than just supporting, just buying a product off the shelf, but it's a bigger picture.
I also think that the larger brewers must make sure that the investment is in local production. Because if you think about it, from hops to barley to every
Yes.
byproduct, I don't see why anything like any of those things need to ever be imported. Labels, packaging,
Yes.
bottles, none of those things need to be imported from any
No.
country overseas, because South Africa has enough for enough. So we have every raw ingredient, we have every label, we have every sticker, we have every printer, we have every bottle. So to think of going abroad to get that is really, I'm not
No, it
certain
does.
what that's about.
No, it doesn't.
But
And
yeah,
even if maybe, let's say, we don't produce it locally currently, I do believe there's a lot of capacity
capacity, yeah,
to have the
to
means and the capacity to do so.
to do so. Because I think if the spend is millions and millions on sport and advertising and marketing and eventing, there must be a budget to make things local.
Yes.
You understand? Yeah. So, and then, in terms of your experience, what role does music play in preserving languages and traditions that might otherwise fade away?
Hey, I think music acts as a living archive, right? A song sung in isiZulu, Setswana, or Sexhosa carries more than just a melody. It carries history, idioms, and a way of seeing the world. For many communities, songs become a classroom. Throughout the continent as well. They become a memory bank whenever you follow a song, you get to learn something new about that particular place, that particular environment, what people, their thought, right? You spoke just recently now about that musician that went abroad, and it they get seen in terms of how they define race, right? And what how they see themselves and how they project themselves to the world, right? And it goes beyond just music.
Yeah.
And you can link music to what Apiwa is doing as well,
Mhm.
right? Because we are the ones that market, that carry, you know, the message to the masses. So there's more that is within music, in preserving language, in preserving culture, in taking things forward, right? And it plays a role as well as a connector of generations, right? If you look at that Amapiano, it connects Amapiano to the older generation, which is Kwaito. Kwaito
Mm.
connects nicely with bubblegum music. So from Brenda Fassie to Trompies to
Mm.
Maporisa, you see the linkages, you see the culture, you see where we come from, you see the times as well.
Yeah.
You can link music to a time period and get to learn more about what was happening within the time period. So there's more to music in terms of who we are, what we do, and how we move forward with that. And it's important then for us, which is what we do with the music in Bizo, is we concentrate on copyright, we concentrate on music business with intellectual property as well. It is then important for us that we protect these things. We protect our languages, we protect our ideas, so that when we take these out to the world, they can still then be traced back to us that, you know, this is originally from South Africa. This comes from this particular time, you know, this particular place in South Africa. So music carries more than, you know, just the melody itself. Thank you.
Yeah. I think also, Spear, it does music for me, and maybe this is personal, but I'm sure it does apply to others. Music is a memory of a place, a time, and a feeling. So sometimes I listen to things, and I've had a cousin that departed young, and I immediately think about that and a time and what we did, that type of
Yeah,
thing. So I think it's very heavy on your memory. It's very good to the minute you hear a song, it reminds you of an event, a person, a thing, a feeling. But
yeah,
in saying that, I think that music also, and this is possibly something for you to think about, I think music must also be integrated somehow into linguistic learning, because a lot of the time what is happening now, languages are being lost. You just I mean, sometimes nowadays, and this is my own experience here again,
yeah,
sometimes I can speak Zulu better than a Zulu, another Black person. And that is because of a loss of the ability to speak languages in the country. And this is because the books that you are reading and the things that you are growing up with is not necessarily always in your language, especially as we become more urbanized. We lose that ability to always speak all of our languages. So I think
yeah.
somewhere, somehow, books need to, whether it be in music or just language, it needs to go down into books as well, where people are able to actually read their language.
No, true, true. I think it across the board, it needs to be in books, it needs to be visually in films as well,
Mm-hmm.
so that we preserve the history, we preserve our heritage and languages. And I
Yeah.
was making an example the other day that when you look at Amapiano nowadays, they go to a more choral, solistic, singing about more church, more inspiring, and you wonder where that comes from, right? Because a lot more of younger generation, they are more into into English. Everyone is talking English. Everyone, but when you look closer, people are going back and connecting, right, with the wider audience. If you want to speak to the rest of South Africa, you need to be speaking in your own language. You can't take on another. another language. And that
Yeah.
goes across the board, whether you are Swana, Sotho. At the Music in Bizo this year, we had guys come up to Durban from the Northern Cape, right? And we had Khoi, Amapiano, guys singing in Khoisan, Amapiano, R&B music, etc.,
Mm.
etc. So there is a shift amongst the youth in saying that we need to preserve who we are, and in
Yeah.
expressing ourselves, we also need to connect to our community, right?
Mm.
Because if we need to build, you need to build with your community, because your community are the ones that are going to lift you up. So if you're creating a fan base and if you're creating an audience for yourself, you start with your audience, with your community,
Community.
and how
Yeah.
you communicate with your community becomes extremely important. You can't jump to English, you can't jump to, right? So you need to communicate directly with them, bring them in, and then grow with them. And then the rest of us will catch up to say, oh man, there's someone from the Northern Cape and they're doing
Mm.
amazing. And then when we listen, man, this is
Yeah.
beautiful music.
That's it.
So
Yeah.
that's important, yeah.
And I just opened something, and I think that's so important because I'm just doing something with one of our member companies where they're doing they're writing books in different languages, and they said community empowerment is where we start. We become regional instead of becoming national immediately, because the process of documenting and sharing musical heritage empowers communities by fostering a sense of ownership and shared resources. It is
Yeah.
only when you make the impact from a community base do you then make the impact nationally.
True, true.
Yeah. And I think
Um,
that's so true. Exactly what you've been saying.
Yeah, no, I think that's the way to go nowadays. There's so much music being produced, so much music that's being added onto streaming platforms on a daily
Platforms.
basis. It's over 100,000 songs that get uploaded onto Spotify in one single day, right? So if you want to create a fan base, if you want to, you need to start with your community. You need to build from the ground up, bring the people that are much closer to you, and from there then you can grow into a superstar. But the fandom needs to start with the community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so
I
much
think
for that. Yes.
sorry, Alicia. I think to add on to what Uspe is saying, it's similarly even to the product side of the business. That having your community, people that buy from you, and it's also allows you to also grow organically, where you don't, especially with a product, where you test the market, you test what works, you test things like shelf life, you test such things in a more sort of a control environment, and then you start growing from there. And I think as South African entrepreneurs, we tend to all want to be national, we all want to export, we all want to be the next big thing. And at times we rush. I feel we rush too much to want to get to
Mm.
that. I think just to the point you were saying that building from the ground and allowing organic growth and allowing
Yeah.
the community to help you grow.
That's it, absolutely. And Aphiwe, while we're on that, one of the questions our member companies have asked, when consumers pick up a Tolagazi beer, what
Mhm.
message or cultural story do you hope that they take away with them?
So the Tolokazi beer, we actually celebrating three main pillars.
Mhm.
The one pillar is the telling the story of how African women are the ones who brew beer to this day. And I think if you go to most parts of the world, the traditional beer making has been taking over because of the obviously modernization and industrialization. And then what you find is that in our that's the story for Tolukazi carries that we are a proudly South African brand that is produced by women who are reclaiming our space as brewers in the African context. And two, we are also celebrating our heritage, where we want, when we have people visiting our beautiful country, obviously we take them to the parks, we show them the big five, we dance for them, we show them our beautiful clothing, we give them our beautiful food. But at the end of that experience, we then give them the same beer that they would have had if they just stayed back home. So for us, it's like, how do we then complete a truly South African experience? Such a person, when they leave, they're like, oh my God, I just had XR experience from A to Z. So we about that. That's what we want. One of the things we want people to live with. And I think thirdly is obviously preserving our culture, preserving our heritage. Because interestingly, there was once a study I read where they were talking about the fact that sorghum is becoming extinct. Because we are all so modernized that we've forgotten some of the foods and the drinks our grandparents used to drink that allow them to some most times obviously live longer because of just how organic some of these products are. But for me, it's also to look at such things to say, how do we still incorporate some of these ingredients into the modern foods and drinks that we're currently consuming, and keep that heritage so that our kids can also not only know the modern side of things, but also still remember, where our forefathers, what they used to do. So those are the key things that when someone picks up a Telokazi, we want them to remember. And also, I think the last one is the fact that we are going to a global brand, but with local appeal. We never want to lose our authenticity as a proudly, purely, loudly African brand that celebrates Africa to the world and takes Africa to the world.
That's very good. One of the mistakes I think that large brands make is I noticed recently that larger brands, what they do is, oh, we're going to go abroad and we're going to take you abroad, and not a single person that drinks their beer or their cider goes abroad, but every influencer is then chosen as if it's a lucky draw and they're gone abroad. And this is one of the biggest mistakes we make in marketing, when we leave behind people that consume our product for the people that do not know our product, but they just have a face to the influence. Obviously, brands want numbers. Like recently, I saw an influencer do on a beer brand say, go there holding the thing, not drinking. And a week later, she says, I've been sober for 6 months. I've never drank. So I think that is such a missed opportunity. And you may think, no, that's not a biggie. If I am someone that is lactose intolerant and I'm, advertising milk, it's really a missed opportunity. It really is a missed opportunity. Why would someone who's lactose intolerant be supporting dairy? You understand? So that's why I say people who consume your product, people who are loyal to your brand, are the people that you should be taking with you to places. And that's not just marketing, that is sales. Because with marketing without sales is a loss. So authenticity is so important in marketing, because you are taking real people that are really purchasing your product, people that are really making a difference to your brand, to the world. So I think a market, what you said is very important. And to other people doing marketing, I think authenticity is what sometimes when you miss an opportunity is because you're not authentic. Spare, in terms of one of the questions asks, when South Africans choose to stream or buy local music, how directly does that benefit the artist compared to international platforms?
Okay, thank you. I think the impact is significant, right? I'll compare the two. We'll start with streaming. And for the South African market, especially local artists, that can be very small. It's a fraction of a cent, and it's not a lot of money if people are streaming your music. It needs to go into millions of streams before you see any real value. But still, those platforms create, it's for marketing, it's for exposure. They get your music out there to the rest of the world, and then it's up to you, how do you follow on that. And so the more people stream your music, you get added into different playlists. It becomes almost like radio. So now you are here in South Africa and your music is played all over the world, and then that creates opportunities for you.
Okay.
I think what is more important from a South African based or a South African musician is people really, really supporting them directly. And how can people do that? So it could be direct purchases where you buy merchandise, music directly from them, where you attend shows that they events, live events that they create. You go
Mhm.
and you support them in that way, because that still is more value to directly to the music industry, directly to the music, to the musicians themselves, than streaming and any other platform that is out there. So if you really want to support local, you need to go out there, support the musicians, buy their music. Even in when we're doing our own events at home, traditional events, play South African music,
Mm.
expose South African music to other people as well, right? When there's a wedding, book a South African band, right? Don't just book a DJ, get people to play live, negotiate and see what you can get, right? There's a whole range of musicians out there beyond the music that we see on TV, right? So you can support musician in many ways, but the most important is directly investing in them by making sure that you go to their shows and you
Mhm.
buy their music, you buy their merchandise as well. That is how
Yeah.
you can support the musicians.
I think also, I want to, this links directly to your last question. I don't think we either saw it, but it does, because the last question says, can consumers go beyond just streaming or buying local music?
Yeah.
Can they, for instance, attend festivals or buy merchandise to help these individuals, gain better traction and grow their revenue?
Yeah, I think consumers and fans are like an important part of the ecosystem, right? And that's why music audience development is so important in the country, right? Whereby you introduce the different
Yeah.
sounds to different communities and you to different fans as well across the board, right? If we had more South African radio stations playing South African music, right, on a range of 80-20, 80% South African music and 20%, international, that could help a lot.
Mm,
We want to
mm,
see more of ourselves on TV as well, more music videos from South Africans, not just one genre, right? Because we have
across the
such a
kingdom.
wide range of
Yeah.
music in the country, from right through in Limpopo, right through to the Western Cape. There's a lot of South African music that we should be listening to. And we do have the many platforms. We have over 200 community radio stations. I'm not a plethora of radio
Mm.
stations on SABC as well. The more we play, the more value we create for our musicians. And I think that is the important message that we need to drive to the audience, because the audience is the key in all of this, right?
Absolutely.
Musicians do this for us as the audience.
And tell me, I can't remember who, but do you remember there was a time when on the radio station we heard more local, there was a larger percentage of local music playing as opposed to international.
Yes, sometime back there was a 90-10 rule that
Yeah.
came on, right? And yeah, it was reversed, but
Mm.
I think it's an important debate that we need to get into, right?
Yeah.
Because Apiwa said it, that when people come down here, they get to experience all these other things, the big five and food,
Mm.
etc. But what's playing in the background,
Yeah.
right? They go or they jump on these cars. What's playing in the cars, in the radio stations? They go into different venues. What's playing in these venues, right?
Mhm.
What are they drinking when are they in those venues? right? We need to curate a truly South African experience, an experience that
Experience.
represents us, right? And holistically, in terms of just taste, sounds, and everything else that we see, right? So I think it's important that we start looking at what's playing all across the board.
The board. And this is to the both of you, because a lot of the times, my husband is from the event industry, and a lot of the times I know that, to what Apiwe said, a lot of the large organizations whereby your hotels, B&Bs, all of these, they have to keep at least 50% international. They call it local drinks and then international. For me, if you are here in South Africa on a safari, you should be afforded a South African experience or an African experience. So I don't think it is just a demand from the person. I think it's a mindset of the hotel or safari or whoever, that we have to keep international beer, we have to keep international food, we have to keep international music, whereas the person came from the USA or Canada or all over the world for an African
Yeah.
experience, only to get an international experience at an African resort. I think that's where things need to change, because I don't think someone traveled 14,000 kilometers just to come for an international experience in an African resort. So I think a lot of that needs to change, and I think this is something that's very important. From music to drinks, we need to offer an African experience.
Yeah.
Um,
Can I just
so
jump in, Alicia?
yes, sure.
Just to add, to say we need to collaborate more, right?
Yes,
And we need platforms like Proudly South African, where we are then able to network amongst each other so that we can
absolutely.
curate these experiences, right?
And take it to these hospitality industries and say it was curated by us for your guest.
True, true. Because if
Yeah.
you look at the Music in Bizo, we host well over 25 countries get represented at the Music in Bizo. And when those people come into the country, they want to experience South Africa from
Mhm.
the music, the food, the people,
Yes.
the places, the vet, etc., etc. Right, right through to the hotels. When they come into the hotels, they want to hear South African music. They don't want to
Mhm,
be sitting there or listening to Kenny G, etc. Right? So
mhm.
we need to collaborate more, and we need to be talking each other so that we create these experiences that showcase who we are as South Africans.
Absolutely. I think that's so right. Many years ago, I think it was in 2009, I worked at an international company, a German company, and one of the guys came from Italy and one from Germany, and they went to one of our casinos, and they said, "Oh, I felt it was so boring because I felt it was just a remake of our home." Our hometown, and I thought it would be truly African and authentic, where I could taste, the food and the beverages, and really be, into the culture. And all I saw was, a little bit of Italy and Germany recreated here. And a lot of the times we come here for that experience. So I think even before joining Proudly South African, I've always had that in my mind, that people come here for an African experience and we're recreating Europe here. Sadly. So very, very important point brought by the both of you, I think. And it's something that we need to collaborate on to change you know. And then just a question to the both of you. So both of your industries, being it brewing and music, are tied to social connection. As I said before, whether when you hear a song, you remember a drink, you remember the food, you remember the person. So it's really a social memory. How do you see consumer choices in these spaces influencing the survival of cultural heritage? So, do you think that consumers are focusing on these beers because they're having, or the music because they have a cultural affiliation to them? Either of you, it doesn't matter who.
Now I'll start. I think for me, there's. I think I mentioned it also earlier on. We amongst like I'll probably say my generation, who kind of like born freeze. We went through the different stages, and I think we're at a point where just looking at myself and my friends and the people closer to me, where we are now more conscious of
Mm,
who we are. And there's a whole big awakening within the African cultures and people to say, you know what, I want to know my who I come from. I want to know, my lineage. I want to know more about myself. Um, and I feel that that is part of us preserving the culture. And I think it's something that I mean, if you even look at the music space, we, like nowadays, I mean, Africa as a whole is also looking at what we're doing in South Africa.
mm,
We are, as South Africans, influencing the rest of the continent, and not so much people looking in the US anymore. And I think for me, it's more to say, how do we continue with that? How do we sort of inter-influence each other as Africans, sort of create our own ways of doing things, which I believe would then kind of drive that cultural growth and heritage and preservation of that heritage.
absolutely. And Spear, before I let you come in, I thought it was important to say, recently I had a bit of a health issue. And after being in hospital, the first thing I did when I got out of hospital was go home. And home is not in Johannesburg, home is in KZN. And I think one of the reasons why you go home is to get back in connection with your culture, because that is really truly healing. To be free, to choose yourself, your culture, your heritage, your language, your music, your food, your everything, gives you a sense of freedom, and it heals you. And I think from whether it be music, whether it be drinks, whether it be just healing, when it's time for you to really heal yourself, you need to go home. So heritage is very much tied up to home and who you truly are. And I think the more the less we resist being who we are, the more transformative we can be, you know? So spare your part of it. What do you think? Do you think music is surviving this cultural heritage?
Oh, I wanted to talk about home, but
You
um,
still can.
um, yeah, what you're saying is incredibly powerful, right? Because when consumers then um, are making the choice to buy what is being created, whether it's music, whether it's Tologazi with the beer and everything else that speaks to who we are, then it's an investment, right? It goes beyond just then, it says what you're doing is quality, what you're doing we love, and
Mhm.
it's an investment that we carry this forward to future generations, then it
Yeah.
becomes heritage, right? So with us going back and reconnecting, because home is is where you reconnect, right?
Mm,
And a lot of us in South Africa, there's a big disconnect in terms of who we are, whether the languages that we speak on a daily basis or just our history, right? And just knowing who we are, right? We always trying to go back and figure out who we are, and we carry some of those things into the present so that we push them forward, right? So if we are going back and rediscovering these things of these ways of brewing beer, this way of making music through makoyana, through uadi, and a number of these traditional instruments. And if we go back and we take a mahobo and we start preserving all these things, and the consumers around us and the audiences around us are putting that stamp to saying they choose this instead of, right, or they choose this regardless of what else is in the market at the time, it's a big investment, and it encourages us to create more. It encourages everyone to push forward and connect with who we are, right? So I think it's an incredible choice that the customers are making, and we really appreciate that, and we want more of that, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. And I think that as I said, it cannot because I'm in my 40s now, so I understand it, but I think our youth needs to understand that whenever you need to connect, home is where you connect.
Mm,
And also you need to turn to a lot of the businesses I see entrepreneurs, it is only now, recently, I mean, you are P where you spare, and a lot of others are turning inwards to look inside and to create businesses that are aligned to heritage. They're not, the youth is still afraid, I must say, but the older people in their 30s and 40s and onwards, we're not afraid to be truly, authentically who we are. I'm not afraid to say who I am. You're not afraid to say who you are. And I think we need to have the youth learn that there's nothing to be ashamed of culture, of heritage, of home. There's
yeah.
absolutely nothing. And we can build businesses on this home. We can build businesses on culture. We can build businesses on heritage because that's what you've done. And you're here telling your stories. So I think that's very important. And I think that's also very powerful. And I think that
Mm,
the lesson here is to ask you to also, ensure that through the building of your businesses that you include the youth in them so that they can aspire to also create, I think that's important.
I think
And then, yeah, happy
to
with
add
you.
on to your point, to add on to your point, Alicia, I think for me, to what you're talking about, it's about our indigenous knowledge. It's about
Hmm,
taking what we know, what we've always known. We might have over time, forgotten it, or maybe, through the generation it hasn't been passed on the right way. It was not documented, but it is our indigenous knowledge, it's our indigenous abilities, our skill set. And I'd like to encourage like entrepreneurs to say sometimes we don't have to wait for government to do something for you, or wait for whoever for export opportunity, for an offtake agreement from wherever. Just take what you can do, what you are capable of doing, that you know already exactly how to do it, and just go and do it.
yeah,
Whether it's baking of scones, making khaimere, these are macheo, these are things that we all grew up with. Cook sisters, why are we not commercializing some of these things? Why do we then wait? And then once we start having a international company coming in and commercializing because they can see the business opportunity, then we start crying that no, they come here and take over our things. But you've been sitting with your things and doing nothing with them. But you know that people want to eat these products. We have been eating them. We can't get access to them. There is definitely a market. So I encourage anyone that's on the call to really start looking at just around themselves. What is there? What can they do? And what can they commercialize and make a business out of it?
yeah.
yes. I I also think that we're very much about a influencer market. Apiwe, are you able to hear me? Oh, okay. Sorry. I think we're very much about an influencer market where we feel like everything needs to be influenced in order to be consumed. I think people are consuming your items, and if you want people to influence your items, you have to find the right people.
Mm,
And I think influence is not like if I were to talk about music, I would call Spare to come and talk about music, as opposed to an influencer who doesn't know anything about the different genres of music, influencers that have 1 million following but don't know music. So I think influence needs to be reanalyzed as well. You bring in industry experts as opposed to people who have just gotten lucky with over 1 million following, So, because it's true, influence needs to come from industry experts. Influence doesn't come from people who are really social media savvy. I think that's
Yeah.
important. Yeah. So I also think that what you're doing is really amazing, and my message to you is to attract the youth into doing what you're doing. Maybe not necessarily exactly what you're doing, but to influence them positively, to say that South Africa, as you said, you can make beer, you can make skincare products, you can make music, all of those things. So it is so important to get into that, because South Africa has everything you need. We don't necessarily have to wait for the government to give us what it is that we think that we need. And then is there any closing statements from both your sides?
Okay, just to jump in on the element of youth, right? Within the music industry has always been led by the youth, right? From its inception, and the people that carry, that innovate, are the youth, right? Abraham was a young someone,
Mm,
when he was in the Billboard charts. The courageous Mamira Makeba was a young person when she was at the UN representing South Africa, talking
mhm,
about a cultural boycott and pushing those messages forward, right? So the youth in the music space are the most innovative and creative, courageous people that we know. And we've always had the talent. I think what we need to drive home at this moment
mhm,
is we need the business savviness. We need us to understand copyright. We need us to understand intellectual property. We need to understand ownership. Protect what we are creating, protect what is sitting there and hasn't been protected for years, for generations, so that
yeah.
when we take this music and when we take the stuff and we move with it forward, it's protected, it is ours, and we can proudly say so that this is our intellectual property, we own it, and everybody else can use it. But
Mhm.
let's start being business savvy, understanding music entrepreneurship, IP, and copyright around that. I think that is the important part, that the youth really need to get their business in order in that space.
That's it. Spear, I do see there's a question for you from our audience. What platforms or events should we support if we want to experience authentic South African music that preserves heritage?
Okay. There's what COVID did was we lost quite a lot of venues in the whole country that brought music into the forefront, that the arts, that were creative spaces. But I think importantly now, there's quite a lot, but it's around community art centers, right? So if we can support the community art centers, your KCAP, Kwamashu, the Market Theatre, all these spaces that curate local content from theater, music, performances, poetry, etc. In your local community, if there's an art center where the youth are going and they stage plays and they do music, etc., those are the spaces to really support. Go out, buy a ticket, sit there, be an audience member, consume local creativity, right? Because if the artist is supported by their community, they are able to create for the world, right? So those are the spaces that I feel we need to be supporting: the community art centers, our theaters, the spaces that curate local content.
Okay, I think that's perfect. And then just in terms of a period, the question is, um, How long have you been doing what you've been doing?
It feels like forever. um, yeah, so yeah, I'm a microbiologist. I think I've been in the industry for over 20 years now. I started in my I'm telling you my age. I'm in the 40s. I started in my 30s. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs that I've come across. Sometimes we all want overnight success.
Mhm.
We people don't want to put in the time and the effort, and also one of the things is that people don't want to you have to be like a specialist in your niche. I think you mentioned it earlier also, that to become a person that speaks on a specific topic, you need to have paid your dues, you need to have done your 10,000 hours, you need to have proven yourself. And a lot of the youth, because I do some work with the young people also, when you ask them, like, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a businessman. I want to be a businesswoman. Business in what? I don't know. I'll see later.
Yeah,
I just want to make money. I just want to drive a Ferrari, and not realize that it does take time. It does take new building. And the Tolokazi brand, I mean, we've been working on this for the past 10 years. It's been up and downs, my story with different companies closing, losing money, so, but it's been an interesting journey. I probably would do it again if I came back in the next life. Because for me, I think what the work that I'm doing is not just about beer. It's bigger than just the beer as a product, but it's more really doing my bit to preserve who we are and do my bit to celebrate Africa and showcase, our talents and our skills and our products to the global stage.
lovely. Let me see, what's this? Okay, this doesn't say who it's for, but whoever feels like they can answer can. I'm in the manufacturing sector and currently manufacturing at home. Some of the challenges I face is operating at home, which limits the business growth. What can you advise to get out of home and to manufacture within business premises?
I'll take that. It's obviously everything takes time, and that's the main thing. Even if you're managing from home, you need to grow the market size, and grow your revenue, sell more. The more you sell, the more you're gonna have to produce. The more you have to produce, the bigger space you need. So it's just obviously going through the business stages as you should, and just focus more on your sales and marketing, because once you have captured that, then ripple effect is that you're going to have to produce more. And if you need to produce more, then you can afford to also rent out the space. But I think I'll also advise that the participant that raised that question, if you follow Proudly SA, they didn't pay me, but if you follow if you follow Proudly SA page, they actually have different webinars on different sectors. I know there was one on manufacturing, there's one on compliances, taxes. So you can actually, if you just follow Proudly SA or even go through some of the past recordings, there's quite a lot of insights that have been shared by different speakers who are experts in the different sectors. So I really encourage everyone that's on the call to do that.
Lovely. I think
Okay,
that's
just to add,
yeah.
I'm being an
Yes.
sorry, Alicia.
influencer now, Alicia.
Spear will also be an influencer soon.
I just wanted to jump in and also say that and important, because people need to be patient, right? And go through the entrepreneurial journey and understand the stages, but also importantly, collaborate, right? Whilst you're a manufacturer and you're looking to for sales, you're looking for marketing, look to who in the space of marketing and sales that you can collaborate with, and how can they position your brand in the market, right? And I think that becomes important for you, because it might be a win-win for whoever is in the marketing space, and for you as someone who's building up your own brand and you're starting it from scratch, how it reaches the market. And don't be afraid to use music and the music industry
That's
and
it.
young musicians and, and events and those spaces, depending obviously on your product, right? But collaborate with others, not necessarily in the space that you're in, but collaborate because you're looking for market access and you're looking to push sales and. So collaboration is extremely important, especially if you figured out your product and you are very comfortable with your product. Just look at who can you collaborate with. And then Proudly South African would be the perfect space to see who else is serious about their business, who's in the marketing space. Then you network with the right people and you find the correct partner so that you can do things with.
Absolutely. And just to that question as well, I saw, someone speak about business and they said, stay small enough, long enough, you'll be big enough soon enough. So I think it's very important. Everyone wants to be in the Sandton Towers and everyone wants to, have business furniture and everything else. But I think it's so important, especially as entrepreneurs, that you stay small enough, long enough, so that eventually you'll be big enough. Because it's not really about office chair and furniture and all that. Eventually you'll get there, but it's about mastering your trade, about really taking the best product to market. I think that's it. So, colleagues, is there anything else that you want to say to our audience before I say a thank you and farewell?
On my end, after that last saying, you said stay small enough, long enough.
Long enough, you'll be big enough soon enough.
I think that is a beautiful close off.
Yeah, same this side. I think that's perfect.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Spare and Apiwe, thank you so much for your time. Your information is so valuable. I hope the people that need to hear this have heard it. And if they haven't, I hope that you take the gospel out there because what you're doing is really amazing. And I'm glad we had the opportunity to spotlight your business. So thank you very much for your time. I really, truly appreciate it. Colleagues, we have come to the end of our session. Thank you to our esteemed speakers, both Apiwe and Spare. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you to our member companies who have joined. Thank you for everyone who's joined, even on social media, and to our marketing events crew for putting this webinar together. We bid farewell to September and to Heritage Month in such an amazing way. Thank you so much for that. And to everyone else, thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.